Well, welcome everyone. Thank you so much for joining us here for another episode of Secret Jews, Uncovering Hidden Jewish Traditions. Oops, excuse me. Tonight we have a very interesting, and there go my slides, very interesting live event for you, and it's about a secret Seder called a Hamishi Seder. And in a moment, Rabbi Aiello is going to go through this with us, explain it to all of us. And I'm sure there's many of our listeners out there that are like myself that had never heard of this. So let's go ahead and get started. So one of the things that we always like to do when we host our events is we do have sponsors and we want to give them their just due. So we have the Secret Jews of Calabria, also little hidden Jewish traditions that most people don't know about. And to order your copy or to find out how to host a viewing of the event, go ahead and visit www.rabbibarbara.com and you will find the movie there where you could purchase and or find out about a viewing. Rabbi Barbara Aiello, Italy's first woman rabbi. There's a long list of services that she provides. You see some of them here, from marriages, bar bat mitzvahs, vow renewals, baby namings, workshops, virtual guest appearances. Just again, visit rabbibarbara.com and you will be able to find out a whole lot more about the different services that you might be interested in. The William David Company, producers of The Secret Jews. Go ahead and visit williamdavidcompany.com. We show you how to maximize the visibility for your business. And always remember, you don't get a second chance to make a first impression. Well, let's go ahead and introduce Rabbi Barbara Aiello. As we said, Italy's first woman rabbi. And Rabbi Barbara is the first non-Orthodox and first and only woman rabbi in Italy, where she serves as rabbi for, and rabbi, I always have trouble with this, Nir Tamid Del Sud.
Perfect.
I'm getting better, right? The eternal light of the South and the first active synagogue in Calabria in 500 years since the time of the Inquisition. And I can speak personally that it is probably one of the most unique experiences and moving experiences you will ever have if you get a chance to visit it, as I did coming up on 2 years ago, where my daughter was actually bat mitzvahed by Rabbi Barbara on, as we call it, the mountain. As director of the IJCCC, Rabbi Barbara serves those with Italian heritage to help them discover and embrace their roots. In addition, Rabbi Barbara hosts a weekly radio program every Sunday morning. You can actually find it at AM 930, or you can download her app where you can listen to it there, as well as on her website. Rabbi Barbara is a featured speaker and scholar in residence for synagogues and organizations throughout the U.S. and Canada. She was recently a featured speaker of National Press Club, the Newsmakers program in Washington, D.C., very prestigious, and was also a presenter, not once but twice, at the Bahrain Religious Pluralism and Tolerance Project hosted at the United Nations. Rabbi is a graduate of Indiana University of Pennsylvania, where she received Distinguished Alumni Award. She holds an MS from George Washington University. And she received her rabbinical ordination from the Rabbinical Seminary International and Rabbinical Academy in New York City. Wow, that is a mouthful. And she is a prestigious author. And the list really just goes on and on. We could do a whole show just on Rabbi. So I am actually going to turn it over to Rabbi Aiello, and she is going to start our event for us. Rabbi, thank you for allowing me to help you host this event tonight.
Thank you, Dr. Ross. It's so nice to be with all of you. Thanks to everyone who's joining me this evening. We're going to talk about the Italian B'nai Anusim and how they revive a secret Passover tradition, which is called the Seder Haimshi. And of course, we say Hag Pesach Sameach, which is how we say Happy Passover in Hebrew. And we welcome all of you to today's presentation. And also want to let you know that this is a very unusual tradition, something that we revived, something that I learned about in my 13 years serving B'nai Anusim in southern Italy, and a tradition that I've written about. And but if you'd like to try it, Passover's coming up. Of course, the first Seder is Friday night, April 22nd, the second Seder, Saturday night, April 23rd, and the Hamishi Seder would be the fifth night, so that would come later on in the week. But let me tell you a little bit about it. You can decide if this is something you'd like to try. You can also email me if you have a question as well, and we'll help you get started. The Seder Hamishi is indeed a Passover Seder. It is a traditional meal with symbolic foods, prayers, and blessings, songs too, to celebrate the Jewish liberation from slavery in Egypt. But to paraphrase the four questions, how is this night's Seder different from all the other ones, right? Well, the Hamishi Seder began as a secret Seder, a way to celebrate the festival of Passover and not be killed by Inquisition authorities. And some historians believe that the Russian painter Moshe Mammon's most famous work, the Murano Secret Seder, which you are taking a look at right now, is actually a painting that tells the story of the Seder Hamishi, which is a special Passover Seder, which, as I said, is held not on the first and not on the second night of Passover, absolutely not, but as its name suggests, on the fifth night of the holiday. Some scholars believe that it was on an alternate day. Might have been the fifth, might have been the fourth, might have been the sixth. We're not exactly sure. However, legend has it that during the time of the Inquisition, first in Spain, later in Portugal, and finally on the islands of Sicily and the islands of Sardinia, and also there's a small island chain called the Aeolian Islands as well, and eventually into Italy's mainland, Jews who had been forced into Christian conversion, adult baptism, we call them B'nai Anusim. B'nai means children, Anusim means of the forced ones. They were helped surprisingly by none other than their Christian neighbors. The word that I want to introduce you to tonight is neophyte, as these newly minted Christians were called. They continued to arouse suspicion of the Inquisition authorities. Now, mind you, they had been converted, forced into baptism, but Inquisition folks were not stupid, and they realized that many of these people who were forced into Christianity had not really internalized it. Well, they were so suspicious, the Inquisition authorities were, that gardeners, maids, cooks, and nannies who worked in the households of these converted Jews were offered a bounty, money, if they could catch their employer cleaning the house of chametz, which is the leavened breadcrumbs, changing pots and pans and dishes, or preparing pane azimo. And the pane is bread, azimo is unleavened. Pane azimo is unleavened bread, or, that's right, matzah, the unleavened bread eaten during the Passover holiday. So, when the first night of Passover finally arrived, Inquisition soldiers who had laid in wait for the sun to set would burst through the doors of what had once been Jewish homes, checking to see if any of these former Jews were Judaizing, in this case, making Passover in secret. Centuries ago, prior to the Inquisition, Spanish, Portuguese, and southern Italian Christians and Jews were colleagues and friends. And indeed, there was a time on the island of Sicily where Jews, Christians, and Arabs lived and worked together in peace. So, given their history and observing this injustice, some courageous Christians concocted a plan to help their Jewish neighbors at great personal peril to themselves and their families, because we know that Christians who helped Jews were often tortured and murdered along with the Jews that they tried to save. These Christians encouraged their Jewish neighbors to hold a Seder, not on the first night, not on the second night, but in order not to arouse the authorities' suspicions, to hold it on the fifth night. And stories are told of Christian families who allowed Jews to sneak into their Christian cantinas, which would be their basement rooms, and under the cover of darkness, these Jewish neighbors first made the space kosher, and then they actually observed Passover complete with symbolic foods, prayers, and blessings. And someone told me that in her family, she had heard that the Christians would often throw a big party upstairs so that there would be no opportunity for Inquisition authorities to hear the whispered prayers of the Jews who were celebrating on the floor below. Well, over the years, the fifth night Seder became known as the Seder Haimshi, a doubly appropriate name, especially since Hamish is a Yiddish word. I think many of you might know it for cozy, homey, and friendly. Hamish. Maybe you've heard people say, "Oh, I like going to their home. It's so Hamish." Such a Hamish home, Hamishi. In Calabria, in the deep south of Italy, or what we like to call the toe of the Italian boot, our B'nai Enosim continued the tradition of the Seder Haimshi. And almost 10 years ago, when Synagogue Ner Tamid del Sud, the Eternal Light of the South, is the name of our synagogue, when we first revived the Seder Haimshi, it was in the town of Selinute on the island of Sicily. And friends and families, both Jewish and Christian, have gathered annually to celebrate this remarkable Passover event. Now, recently, we held the Seder in the Calabrian town of Lamezia Terme, formerly called Nicastro, near to Timpone, the old Jewish quarter that still stands today. Seder guests toured Timpone, first of all, which is lodged at the foot of the castle of King Frederick II, a monarch who recognized the valuable contribution that these Italian Jews made to the local economy, and as a result, he offered them safety and protection. Following our tour, concert violinist Angela Amato, whose ancestors were forced into Christian conversion, and who, along with her son Alessandro, both of them have returned to their Jewish roots. She began the historic Seder with a musical selection of songs in Ladino, and Ladino is the ancient Spanish Hebrew language of the Mediterranean Jews. And we're looking at a lovely slide right now, and this is where we were all doing our hora together, and we all took hands, and we were singing Hine Matov Umanaim Shevet Achim Gam Yachat, Psalm 133. How good and how pleasant it is when we dwell together as brothers and sisters. This psalm was especially a special favorite, I should say, of the late Pope John Paul II, the Polish Pope, who was the one who decreed that the Jews were the older brothers and sisters of the Christians. And he often referred to this psalm as a way of opening the dialogue between Christians and Jews. And since, as you're looking at our table here, you will see that there I am at the head of the table, and Angela is closest to me there with the white sweater. The family to the left is a Christian family, and they joined with us as well. And if you look at to my right, you'll see a man with a yellow sweater and his wife in pink next to him. That's Professor Vincenzo Villela, who is also part of our Italian Jewish Cultural Center of Calabria and who helps us with all of our research as well. Villela is an ancient Jewish surname, and we were able to help Professor Villela discover and embrace his Jewish roots by doing our surname research, which a lot of you know about as well. Maybe one day we'll do a Google Hangout about that.
Absolutely.
So the Seder Haimshi features some unusual Seder traditions and some that are immediately recognizable. And one of them is the hand washing. And there is Joe and his wife Christina, and there is Feliciano as well. And we're pouring the water and doing the hand washing, which is the way that traditional Seders, not just the Seder Haimshi, but traditional Seders all over the world, maybe the Seder that you're going to, will open with the hand washing. But Hand washing has held a special place in Jewish ritual, especially the ritual of the South. Hand washing and ritual bathing on Friday afternoons, the mikveh, led to persecution in our mountain communities. My Italian village is called Seder Plate, and it was founded as a result of persecution in a nearby village called Scigliano. And what happened in Scigliano was that there was an epidemic, probably influenza, something like that, that killed a lot of people, except the Jews were not dying in the same numbers as their non-Jewish neighbors. Well, the non-Jewish population thought that somehow or another the Jews had cursed them or worse, and so there was word that a persecution was about to take place, sort of like a pogrom that you might be familiar with. Jews being driven out of their homes, beaten up, their property taken and confiscated, etc. Well, excuse me, that happened because we know that the Jews were in the habit of doing the hand washing before meals, just as you see Joe doing right there, for symbolically for everyone else at the table. Also, the ritual mikveh bath, as I mentioned, on Friday afternoons, and this was a time in Jewish history when people believed that washing brought on disease rather than eliminated disease. So as a result, the Jews were living through this epidemic when others were not. And as a result, 5 Jewish families hid in the woods outside of Scigliano and looked around for an isolated area to form a Jewish settlement. And that's how the little village of Seder Plate, where I live, was formed. Let's talk a little bit about symbolic foods at your Hamishi Seder table. They include the traditional shank bone, but for us anusim, it's also coupled with the bietola, the blood red beet, to symbolize the lamb's blood on the doorpost that saved the firstborn in the Hebrew families. Now, cutting and roasting a lamb, killing and roasting a lamb, I should say, back in Inquisition times would have been a tip-off to Inquisition authorities. So rather than risk it, the blood red beet was placed on the table in the spot where the zoroa, where the bone would normally be placed. Locally grown romaine lettuce, it's much more bitter than the American variety that we're used to. That replaces the horseradish, and pieces of celery stalk rather than the parsley serve as the karpas, the green vegetable. And we dip that in vinegar rather than salt water. And of course, it's the symbolism is the same, to remind us of the bitter tears we cried when we were slaves. We Jews were slaves in Egypt. Now, there is the traditional egg on the Italian Seder plate. It's rich and brown in color because it has been roasted for hours in the oven with onion skins, vinegar, and saffron. And it is when you break it open, it is a mellow tan inside. Very, very nice. People enjoy it so much. The Seder meal begins with a primo piatto, first plate, of rice steamed with vegetables. Rice, you say, that's not kosher. Well, in our Sephardic or Mediterranean tradition, rice as well as other kitniot are considered kosher for Pesach. Roasted lamb is often a must in modern day Seders now, along with minya, which is a lasagna-type meat and spinach matzah pie, which we're going to talk about a little bit later on, brought to Italy directly from Spain by our crypto-Jewish ancestors. Let's take a look at the candle lighting. Yes, that's Angela there, and Maria. And notice that if you'll look just right below Angelo, you see that we lit the candles with 3. We lit with a candelabra with 3 candles. Pesach Anusim traditions begin with the lighting of the memorial candle in honor of our forced ones, one separate candle, and that was done at another part of our table on that night. And then it's followed by the blessing for Shabbat and Yom Tov, which would be this year, sung in an ancient Ladino melody. And it's a beautiful, beautiful song. It's Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav vitzivanu leadlik ner. Vitzivanu, vitzivanu leadlik ner. Vitzivanu, vitzivanu leadlik ner. Shel Shabbat, Shel Yom Tov. That's a lovely, lovely Sephardic melody. I like singing that. And the Shabbat candles or the candles for Yom Tov are lit with the shamas. And notice that there are 3 candles. And I brought my own candelabra here for you as well. Maybe we can show this as well. Let's see if we can do that. Can we all see that? And there is the typical Shabbat candelabra is it holds 3 candles, and that's why sometimes it's so difficult to discover our ancient Italian Jewish traditions, because one would look at this and think, how could this be a Shabbat candle holder? But just like we do with Hanukkah, when we use we use a helping candle to light the 8 candles in the Hanukkah menorah, Hanukkah. We use the middle candle to light the other 2, and that's what you're seeing right there in our Seder Haimshi as well. Well, let's talk a little bit about the Seder plate. Oh, this is a modern version of what was close to the original Seder plate. The Seder plate itself is actually a I always stumble over this Hebrew word, kayara, a woven basket type tray covered with silk netting that makes a grand entrance to the Seder table after the kindling of the light. Now, this photo, as I said, depicts a modern version of the ancient tradition of that Seder plate. The early plates, as I said, were woven baskets, and they had indentations, as you can see there, or sometimes small ceramic containers to hold the symbolic foods. But regardless of the style of the Seder plate, at the Seder Haimshi, it does make a grand entrance. In other words, it is not placed on the table to start the Seder. The matriarch of the family will often bring the Seder plate in, and draped with a netting. And I think that was probably because in the Sephardic culture, it's pretty warm by the time Passover comes. And it's probably to keep the flies and the mosquitoes away as well, because those were the days when we didn't have screens or air conditioning. At the Singing of Halacha, is a little bit different than what we would normally expect at an Ashkenazi Seder. And there we're taking a look there when we say Halacha, and it is the chant that recalls our Jewish wanderings. And the plate of matzah is passed either shoulder to shoulder, or, as you see Alessandro doing right here, head to head. So Alessandro had the job of holding the Seder plate, or the matzah plate, over the heads of each participant. And this is sometimes done with the Seder plate and sometimes done with the plate of matzah, but the symbolism is the same. The symbolism is the heavy burden of slavery. And after that, a tin can is often placed at the head of the table. It takes center stage for the recitation of the 10 plagues. And you probably remember in the Ashkenazi Seders that you take your pinky, right, and you dip your pinky into the wine as we say each plague, as we talk about the frogs and the boils and the lice and the mad cow disease. Well, we do the same thing. We recite the 10 plagues. We do it the same recitation in the Hamishi Seder. However, each person puts a little bit of their wine into a tin cup. So we're passing the cup around as we're saying the plagues, and we're filling this tin can. And then when the can is filled, after we've said the 10 plagues, the younger guests carry the can into a far corner of the garden outside. The admonition is, everyone says together, "May our enemies stay far from our door." And then it's time for Dayenu. And this is one of the most well-remembered of all of our Seder traditions. Oh, there you go. And notice what everyone is holding. They're holding long stemmed green onions. And the reason we have these is they symbolize the whips of the Egyptian slave masters, the whips that they used on the Jewish slaves. And if you do this at your table, you can place a green onion at each place setting, and then you can take your hand and slap the onion into into the palm of your hand, and you'll see how it has that sound. It makes the whipping sound. Well, we do that by whipping our hands, whipping our own hands, and then we whip the people next to us as well. And we sing, of course, we sing Ilu natan natan lanu et Shabbat natan lanu et Shabbat Dayenu. Die, Dayenu, boom, boom, die, Dayenu. That's what we're doing right there. Die, Dayenu, Dayenu, Dayenu. And something that the kids like to wait for, and it's something that we all enjoy as well. So you might want to add this tradition to your Seder Hamishi, and other people have said to me that these traditions also are found in the Sephardic traditional Passover Seder too. So nice ones to add as we remember what our ancestors did when they were celebrating in secret. Now, for me, as I am a bat anusim, which would mean a daughter of the forced ones, leading the Seder Haimshi each year in southern Italy is one of the most emotional experiences of my entire rabbinic career. As we read the ancient blessings, and I recall my own family's history, when my own grandmother, when my nonna carried candles to the cellar to kindle the lights of Shabbat. And now as each Seder Haimshi brings with it a realization that fear and prejudice nearly extinguished our heritage, this understanding is coupled with a deep sense of gratitude to the nameless Christians whose courage helped preserve the very traditions that I am able to enjoy today. So each year in Calabria, we Jews who were nearly robbed of our religion and our culture and our heritage bring the light of Pesach out of the cantina and into the hearts of our brothers and sisters who, after 500 years, now have a new opportunity to do as the Torah commands and to become a light unto the nations. The Seder concludes with the traditional wish. You remember what that is, next year in Jerusalem. But for me and my fellow B'nai Anusim, whom I serve in the deep south of Italy, we also add Baruch Hashem, Grazie Dio, next year in Calabria too. So that's a little bit about it. Now, oh, look what we have here. I wanted you to take a look at this, because this is called, and some of you who are Italian who are listening in and watching as well, I'm sure you know that this is called Easter bread, and the Italian word, or the dialect word for this, is kudzuppe. But notice it is a twisted bread with an egg placed inside. Well, there are a number of traditions in southern Italy that where Jewish tradition hides within, or is embedded within, a Christian tradition. Now, we talked a while back about the shofar and how the shofar is sounded not in September or October when Rosh Hashanah normally would fall, but it is sounded on December 31st on secular New Year's Eve. And that, again, was to camouflage, was to embed a Jewish tradition within a secular or a Christian tradition so as not to arouse suspicion. Take a look at at kudzuppe, at this Easter bread. This is significant to me because when we say Passover in Italian, we say Pasqua dei Ebrei, the Easter of the Jews, La Pasqua dei Ebrei. And for us in America, we would say, "Ooh, Easter of the Jews." That doesn't sound right at all. But once again, when we try to mesh our traditions with the dominant culture, so that we are not found out and will not arouse suspicion, doesn't this seem Doesn't this seem as though that's exactly what's happening, especially with the roasted egg in the middle, the kudzupe? Now, Dr. Ross, you're going to make a Hamishi Seder this year, are you not?
I am. I am going to embark on this with friends
Are you
that.
there?
Can you hear me? My sound is good here. Can you hear me, Rabbi?
Well, we are going to make we're going to make a Hamishi Seder. We're hoping to make a Hamishi Seder. Oh, what do we have there? Oh, sorry, no brisket. There we go. No brisket. No, no, no. What are you going to make this year? Would show us. Ah, this is some of our traditional Seder foods. Here's the primo piatto. There we go. There is the rice and vegetables, which we said kidneyot, which are some of the grains that are not permitted at the Ashkenazi Seder, are permitted at the Sephardic Seder. And here is the minya. This is matzah. Take a look. It is a lasagna. It is in the form of a lasagna. It is a spinach pie, and the minya is a layered spinach pie, and there is the lamb. There is the lamb as well, and it's traditional that the only type of meat, if you are having a meat dish at your Seder, would be lamb. No brisket, no, not at all. But the minya is very, very popular. So if you would like to have a Hamishi Seder and invite some of your Christian friends and tell them this story, one of the things that you can do at the Seder, because as you know, we read about the story of the Exodus. If you have my book, the Cathodata Cannoli, about the hidden Jews of southern Italy, there is a chapter on the Hamishi Seder, and you could read part of that as well at your Seder table. So thank you so much for allowing me to share the Hamishi Seder with you this evening.
All right, well, that concludes our event for today. Make sure to stay tuned for more episodes of Secret Jews, Uncovering Hidden Jewish Traditions.